Welcome to 3 in the News. 3 in the News. A podcast for educators by educators. Brought to you by the Los Angeles Institute for Restorative Practices and Research, the authority on restorative practices in K through 12 education.
Hey everybody, welcome to 3 in the News. The structure of the podcast is simple. During every episode, we will analyze and discuss 3 dominant news stories appearing in K through 12 news. Everything from teacher pay, cell phones, bullying, school policy, school politics, discipline, attendance, and much, much more. I'm excited to have you here today. And let me introduce my co-host and the CEO and founder of LARP, Mr. Carlos Alvarez. How you doing today, my friend?
Hey, I'm doing well. What's up, everyone? Hope everyone's enjoying a nice, relaxful, chill afternoon or morning, wherever you're listening from.
And Carlos, you just got back from Tennessee. Tell us why you were there. Tell our listeners why you were there.
Yeah, Chattanooga. I was at the IRP World Conference, which was an amazing event, very well organized, very structured. We had amazing speakers around the world. So this is an amazing conference for restorative practitioners that are either coming into the work or have expert level. So I was there. I went ahead and opened up the conference. I did a keynote on the opening day, which was really amazing.
And I know you had some issues there with your bag. You were telling me one. Why don't you tell us about that?
When you think about it, I love being very prepared. I love going into situations, specifically just keynotes or big events, relaxed and in a nice state of mind. So I went ahead and tried to get to the hotel at least the day before. I wanted to relax. I wanted to just chill. So I took off on Saturday. I was supposed to be there. This keynote is on Monday. So took off Saturday morning from Los Angeles to Dallas. And that's where the nightmare started, man. The storm, weather, coupled with planes not working. And I was delayed an entire 24 hours. So I ended up staying there. I was stuck. I checked in my bag, so I didn't really have anything to wear or anything. So I went ahead and started buying some Dallas Cowboy gear. Luckily, I'm a Cowboy fan. I was able to purchase a couple little things, go to a hotel, rest up, and fly out the next day. So ended up flying out. Got to Chattanooga by 8 p.m. Lo and behold, my bags were lost. So I got there with no bags. I've experienced this 24-hour travel, and I got there with absolutely nothing to prepare. So it was a difficult experience. I ended up getting my bags back until the afternoon, but I busted a Steve Jobs, man. I presented with some jeans and a t-shirt.
And one of the challenges there is handling those kind of situations. We plan for things, and we can even those meticulous planners, there's things outside of our control, and those situations just remind us of that we don't control, and it's difficult because those things can set you back.
Will, that was the main thing that was coming to my consistently, oh my God, so much preparation. I also printed out some workbooks. I had a different outfit. Everything was just collapsing for me. So it really helped me understand, at the end of the day, we can't exactly what you highlighted. You can't control anything. You could only control yourself, your sense of self, and your regulation. So a lot of meditation really helped me out. Meditation and really being in the moment. That allowed me to really stay grounded and provide a really good keynote. But that was the main thing, man. We always try to look at beyond, but the wisdom is within. So we, just grounded myself in it and made it happen.
Nice. And I know, those things don't happen by accident, that preparation. And I think about this quote from Mark Twain where it says, "It usually takes me more than 3 weeks to prepare a good impromptu speech." And, no matter, even though it was not exactly how you wanted it, all the preparation, the years of practice, going through their material, that's what people see at the end. They don't see the preparation. They don't see the sweat of not having your stuff. And they just saw that. So thanks for sharing that. I'm happy you're okay, and I'm happy you're back. And I definitely wanted to share that story of perseverance there.
That's right,
so,
brother. I'm excited to be back.
All right. So our first article today comes from Gallup. A new Gallup poll shows American satisfaction with K through 12 education has dropped to a record low, with only 35% saying they are satisfied and 73% of Americans believing that we are headed in the wrong direction. Confidence in student preparedness is also low. Just 1 in 5 think school prepares students well for today's jobs, and only about 1/3 believe schools prepare students for college. However, most parents, about 75%, are satisfied with their own child's education, suggesting criticism is aimed more at the system than local schools. Overall, the results reflect declining public confidence and growing concern about the future of education in the United States. And I think about this, Carlos. I use Yelp, and imagine working at a restaurant, and you have a 2 out of 5 rating on Yelp, and everybody that's walking into your restaurant, you have this rating, like how does that impact morale? And I'm talking about teacher morale and the staff morale of just this constant negativity from the press, from teachers, or I'm sorry, from parents, from newspapers about the decline in education.
And education has been taking a lot of hits like this, like consistent criticism, like this, like discredit like the work that's happening. Your work is really easy. You get what I'm saying? And I think this question is important for us to kind of dive in there. And I had I spoke to a couple of administrators around this question. And when you think about like a school, when you think about like the school system, for a lot of parents, a lot of people are not really privileged of understanding the background of what makes a school. If you're a person that, like, hey, I'm going into school, I'm a consumer, I'm a student, I'm engaging the school world that way, right? But when you start thinking about like, what does it really take to run a school? There's so much. When you think about the high need of trauma, the burnout rate of teachers, the lack of resources, the consistent, like, hey, you're not doing good enough. That starts building a lot of wear and tear. And when we engage in a lot of conversations with teachers, at the end of the day, our main point is like, you're not a machine. You still feel, you have a heart. And if you get into this field of being an educator, it's this consistent, like this path of altruism. You're consistently engaging in bettering yourself. And that gets very difficult when people start, really not seeing the amazing work that you're doing.
Yeah. And I worked at a school where there was some pushback from the community at the school. And there were like daily protests or weekly protests of parents, a small group of parents. There were flyers being circulated about the school. They were publishing everybody's like pay and saying that, the teachers were overpaid and they were underqualified. And I remember working under that atmosphere and like feeling like I wanted to get the hell out, because what it is it's just like it demoralizes you. It demoralizes the staff. It demoralizes, like you're saying, this is a job that's based on altruism of giving back. And when you feel like, I don't know, there's something about it that just like, I can't give back because I'm feeling, I don't know, like people are criticizing me. So, I think this kind of tone is not unique in a sense, but what is unique here is that a lot of people focus their criticism more on education itself and not local schools. Parents are seeing that, they're still supporting their local schools. They're seeing the day by day hard work that the teachers are doing to push the kids forward and to move education forward. And so it's interesting that, the decline is in the educational system itself, but not in the local schools, like how parents are able to compartmentalize that.
When you pose a really a perfect situation when you're coming into an environment and you're already activating your defense mechanisms, right? You're coming in here, it really restricts the way how you engage in creativity or even collaboration. So you're gonna see educators when you see these very oppressive environments where they work at. You're gonna see educators that are gonna be a little more highly reactive. You're gonna see a lot more educators that are more responsive to the micro expressions, because when we activate this sense of protection, because at the end of the day we're seeking safety, we're not our best, right? So we're starting to see. I remember those situations where I would experience a lot of parents would protest and say some pretty awful things, and at the end of the day, you're like, oh man, I'm working with your kid. I have a really good relationship with your kid. And I remember having those like internal wounds inside of me, like, oh my god. But it's so tough.
I think parent pushback is one of the things that demoralizes the most. Like, I remember during that, I was the administrator of a summer school program, and one of the students put all the chairs on the roof. His friend got on the roof, and he handed like 20 chairs, and they put 20 chairs up on the roof. And I met with the mom, and I talked to her, and I said, the janitorial staff took almost 1 hour to get those chairs down. They had to like go through, stop what they were doing. And so I said, he should pay that hour back, and pay that hour back by supporting the janitorial staff. And the mom, I remember, she pushed back and said, you're not going to have my son doing janitorial work. Like, that's what you're teaching him. And she kind of misconstrued everything. And I just remember feeling like that feeling of like, wow, like the parents don't support the work that we're doing, and that was a little micro example of it. But I can't imagine this bigger example of just people thinking that teachers are indoctrinating kids, that we have the worst intentions, that we're moving our own agendas. And so it's tough. And I think it goes back to our last podcast where we talked about the need for positive stories and the need to sometimes push the positive narrative as well.
Yep. You also highlighted the whole situation about parents like really scrutinizing the system, not the educators or the schools itself, because we start building relationships, right? And we start identifying that. I think the biggest thing that's prompting that question for parents is AI. Is think about everything, how fast they're able to get. And now when you're coupled with a lot of this negative advertisement that, like school is not needed, school is a waste of time. And there's a lot of propaganda around that. And it captures a lot of parents at the end of the day. And I feel that that's the main thing that's really capturing this negative like standpoint on how they look at schools. It's a combination of like AI, combination of really, honestly, a lot of people that go into school, like, great majority of my friends that went into and got their degrees, a lot of them don't work in the same field that they intended to go into. So when you start thinking about like, how do you start selling a different notion of education to parents? They're looking at, well, my son or daughter could make more money doing this. Because at the end of the day, bottom line is how much money or what can this provide?
And I think the pandemic, showed us what an indispensable pillar education is. When all these things happen, I mean, parents lost the ability to send their kids everywhere, somewhere every day. They were struggling to align their work schedule. Like, schools play such an important role. And that's why it's so disheartening to kind of see these kind of stories of declining trust and declining, confidence in the direction that they're heading. So our second story today comes, kind of in the same thread. Our second story comes from CBS News. A Florida mother is demanding an apology after a teacher at the Floral Avenue Elementary School in Pollock County sang an altered version of Happy Birthday to her 6-year-old son, which included the lines, "You live in the zoo, you look like a monkey, and you smell like one too." CBS News found the video of the incident deeply offensive, especially given the historical context of Black people being insulted with monkey comparisons. CBS News also pointed out and confirmed the investigation into the matter by the public schools. During the investigation, the mother plans to transfer her son to another school and is requesting disciplinary action and counseling support for him. What Carlos, we always prep before we do this. You saw the article that had the video in it. Like, what is your initial reaction to this?
I was upset. And at the end of the day, like, yeah, it's a slip up, but it's a horrible slip up, because at the end of the day, you're really weaponizing kids. And that, some people might say, wait, oh, this is out of control. Those are such impressionable little minds. I work with a lot of elementary students, and you have to be very, very careful, because they're consistently looking at what they could do and what they could get away with in a good way, in a different way, and just seeing that, and the teacher not being in tune to that situation, I was just like, what are you doing? And you could obviously tell that the student's not enjoying that situation.
No, he was so uncomfortable, and he was, he was also being recorded. Like it's found like she was the one recording it. So having a camera in front of you while this
Horrible
thing that is disheartening is happening, it produces anger. So I get the mom's demand for an apology and her anger for this situation, And Carlos, what do you think about, this idea of educators and how, because one of the defenses of the teacher was that she was being humorous, that, she really loves this kid, which I don't doubt that, but that she was being humorous, and that, humor is essential in a classroom. Like, what do you think about that? How would you respond to that?
No, absolutely. I would validate that. Humor is very important. However, under what context, and also like understanding what is your actions, is your humor gonna create harm? And at the end of the day, if you're not reflecting, if you're not asking these questions, and if there's a possible maybe, then you shouldn't do it as an educator. We never know what triggers kiddos. We never know what are some antecedent wounds that they could currently have when they're, what they've experienced in different places. So I understand humor, but like the Humpty Dumpty song or different little situations, not humor to that level. You get what I'm saying? I just think you're smarter than that.
Well, and not only that, like children misunderstand sarcasm. They have not very good understanding of humor, of what a humor at someone's expense is sometimes lost in a class, or it's lost on kids. And as teachers, we have to be role models. And so the other students are looking at the teacher singing this altered version of Happy Birthday to this kid. From the video, I mean, you can't obviously deduce everything from the video, but there's other. It's a multicultural school. They have obviously he's an African American, but there's some white students around. And what impact would I say? As the teacher modeled this behavior, this kind of humor at this kid's expense. What example did that set for the other kids?
Exactly. What starts happening now when students start singing it during recess or during lunch, and it's not student's birthday, and now they're like, oh, well, we're just being humorous. And think about when you're thinking as an educator, it's this consistent like observing yourself and like the actions you're engaging in, because kiddos, again, at the end of the day, they're looking at everything, and we need to be the example. I just like, you need to do better. And you did engage in harm. There is harm present. We need to have a conversation with parents. The educator is really going to identify here if she's all about it. If she engages in a restorative conference with the mom, where now this healthy confrontation of conversation, and mom's going to externalize also her discomfort now with racism, and actually this is happening to my young boy. We need to be able to make this moment correct. And just punishing the teacher is not the way to go into it. Like, okay, well, yeah, we're going to suspend the teacher. We're going to do this and that. That's not going to get anywhere, because that's not going to take care of the systemic issue that's happening. Because now think about if one teacher is saying it, what do you think about like the rest of the teachers engaging in this type of humor? So I think these are perfect situations where we need to start developing systems and more awareness around like impact.
And the story does talk about that the mom plans to transfer the son to another school, but is requesting disciplinary action against the school district itself and this teacher in particular. And yeah, it's sad that this is kind of the takeaway from this, because I think there is a lot of possibility of conversation There's a lot of learning. There's an opportunity for really building up trust in the system itself, if they were able to engage in a restorative process. And so, I think the one thing here from this teacher's perspective is like, look, if you are a teacher and you've taught long enough, you've made mistakes in the classroom. You've said things that you shouldn't have said. You phrased things in a way that was offensive. And I've done it. I've said things, that I regret that I said it in a way that I thought would be humorous, and it wasn't. And I've done it. The one thing now is it's so public now. It's in the public. You recorded yourself doing this, and that's also adds a layer of accountability to our actions. And so, I think it's a lot of pressure, because it is something kind of innocuous. You're just singing happy birthday to a kid, and in the spur of the moment, you made a decision that now is going to impact your job, and it's going to impact this kid's life and this mom's life. And I just think teaching is tough, and teachers make these kind of mistakes. They make a lot of mistakes, not these kind of mistakes. They make a lot of mistakes.
Well, Will, I absolutely agree with you. But when you think about the entire situation, my background's in forensic psychology. It's all about explaining the behavior and going into the autopsy of the, really going in there, right? You think about a mistake is a cute, quick, holy moly, I made a mistake, right? You recant, okay, you come back, but when you think about this situation, right? You said it. She recorded it. She had to upload it. There was a lot of steps that went into play. There was a lot of moments of reflection where you had to look at the story a couple of times. My biggest fear is absolutely she engaged in a horrible mistake. But my biggest concern here is the lack of awareness. And that's what really prompts the concern, for myself, wow, there was a couple of steps that you had to engage in.
Yeah.
Because you're gonna okay, that's not the best thing, that this doesn't look right. So just the lack of awareness for me is a big problem.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen it online, some of the comments in the section, that this teacher's racist and that, she's teaching minority students, and there's some serious conclusions based off this small snippet of the totality of this teacher's career. So I think, it's an unfortunate situation all around. Obviously my concern is for the 6-year-old student, who lived through this, who now, has to deal with the effects of moving to another district, where everybody's going to be might have seen the video. And I just hope he does get counseling. I hope he does get support. I hope they're able to do a restorative process with this situation, and that everybody involved is able to learn.
Absolutely. And I'll say this last piece. When I was a school dean, a lot of the situations that I would encounter with students when they would at least situations or engage in any disciplinary conduct, and they would entrust the school, was because of educators that wouldn't own up, and wouldn't reflect and wouldn't apologize when they engaged in harm. As adults, I've done it. As an administrator, I think the important part is, how do we repair harm? Because at the end of the day, this kiddo is going to be a consumer of our educational system. He's going to feel our product. So it's important for that little 4th grader to be a very well-balanced 12th grader. And that happens with removing the fears and the stigma of what, now he starts thinking, are all white teachers bad? Are they all racist? You have to, at the end of the day, this situation, not done correctly, is going to perpetuate thoughts like that. Because, you have to own up to the harm and hopefully help that kiddo reintegrate that situation back in.
Thank you, Carlos. So our final story comes from K-12 Dive. A new study reported by K-12 Dive found that teacher turnover leads to higher student suspensions and referrals, especially when teachers leave in the middle of the year. Mid-year departures by experienced teachers cause discipline rates to rise. Listen to this, Carlos, 20 to 30%, while improving teacher retention leads to fewer suspensions. The study also found that shows that Black students are disproportionately affected by increased discipline in high turnover schools. Research say that turnover isn't just about a staffing issue. It's a disruption to relationships and school climate, highlighting the need for stronger teacher support and retention strategies. And Carlos, what experience, as we talk about this article, what experience have you had with teachers leaving in the middle of the year, or calling it quits, abruptly?
Teachers, at the end of the day, what they're creating with students is they're rehealing the sense of attachment for a lot of kiddos. They're creating relationships, and when you think about now highly marginalized communities that have higher levels of trauma, you think about now the situation of attachment. We're resetting our attachment with a lot of educators, and a big contributor to lack of safety is when things are just ripped away from you. And these experiences, when teachers leave, they're not done sometimes the most gently. Sometimes teachers just leave like, hey, next week. You could prep teachers. Also, there's sometimes you can't really say much because of confidentiality. There's a lot of things that are behind a teacher just leaving, either for a good reason or for a reason that was involuntary. But it creates a lot of, it reactivates wounds for students at the end of the day.
Oh, yeah. No, yeah. Because, education is all about relationship building. And you have this abrupt end to this relationship where the person, usually the teacher doesn't tell the students that what they're planning to do. It's gone. It's left to administrators the next day or the next week to kind of assuage the situation with students, try to explain, try to help them, and try to set up whoever comes in with some sort of game plan for success. It's an impossible situation. I last year I did a PD in one of the schools that we work with, and they had just had a teacher leave. They had a teacher that had left in the middle of the year. So the PD was in January. This teacher had left over Christmas break, and nobody knew that this teacher was planning to leave. The classroom was still decorated with all their stuff. It was just such an abrupt leaving or departure that the kids would come in and my teacher left, what, and who's this person now, and now I'm supposed to listen to you, and it's an impossible situation, and this disproportionately impacts minority students.
Abandonment, it triggers abandonment issues. It triggers a lot of situations. And now think about you a lot of kiddos or regress to a state like, hey, it's sometimes you go into like a little free-for-all, like, whoa, what happened to the structure here? You even go into classrooms where you never got into issues or you never got into trouble with anyone here, and now you're getting into trouble. And when we're fond believers of the environment dictates self-regulation. So if the environment is chaotic, it's combustible, is not predictable, then it's going to dictate student self-regulation. Of course, you're going to see a lot more issues, especially students that have different disabilities that require some, these types of structures. So consistency is very important.
Yeah. And I think about, I know the article talks about US, but I was an international educator, an international administrator for many years. And Carlos, I got to say, the thing that turned me off the most was these sudden departures. What happens when you get expat teachers in a foreign country? Not only are they adapting to the school environment, but they're adapting to the school culture. And so, they're living in a place that they've never lived before. They're working in a place where they never lived before. They're in high stress. And, I would say every year during my tenure principalship, we had an abrupt departure where a person just got up and left. It was never planned. And then you're just left picking up the pieces. And I have to say that was the thing that I liked the least of international teaching. And I knew it was going to happen every year. It was going to happen. Teachers come, they watch some video about the city, they fall in love with the city, and then they come to live here and it's not what they thought. And you know what? I don't really want to work, and they leave. And there's no consequences for that because, in international teaching, there is no consistent background check in terms of if you abruptly leave a school, like your next employer doesn't have to even know that you work there, so
Yeah.
there's this like almost, I don't know, like impunity, like I can just do it, like I lose nothing, and I saw that, in adults, and I always felt the worst for the kids because I just couldn't understand how people could do that to kids.
Yeah, when we would have situations like that, either like that's when you and your administrative team, like I know for us, our administrative team was always on point with thinking about like contingency plans, like what are we going to do? What are we going to engage in? So one of the biggest vectors of success in these situations, we would process students like community circle. And we would immediately go in there and we would immediately be transparent with our community. And immediately when we went in there and like, hey, this has happened, we are only sharing as much as we can. And, think about a teacher maybe being, like, hey, I'm leaving because my parents are, like, I need to take care of my mother or whatever. And now I'm going to do this full time or et cetera. There's millions of reasons why people leave, but we'll just use that as an example. And the teacher might not want people to know that. So what we have to think about now as administrators is we have to be creative and really position a conversation for students to, one, still build hope. Like, okay, we still have, a good thing going on. Two, really build some sort of cohesion with the class. So you have to start building this togetherness. And when that starts happening, you start seeing think about when you're in the woods, right? Like, and your main camp person leaves, and now you the circle gets a little bit tighter now, and you start following each other. That's part of human behavior. And that's what really consistent community circles do. So these things are going to be inevitable, Will. There are, you're going to have students. I think that teachers do that, like internationally. They want to understand, like, get the feel of it. I'm like, okay, this wasn't what I wanted later, right? And they take off. I think that issue is always going to be there. Teachers now, even thinking about like with the burnout rate, think about with like where we're at with education. That's something that's consistently going to happen. And when you're in the business of working with other human beings, like sometimes you do things abruptly, like they need to take off, right? So I think now we need to really think about what are the structures that we have in place to help us be responsive to these situations that are emerging.
Yeah, I think about, I'll end with this. After one of those abrupt departures, as we'll call them here, one of the kids comes up to me and gives me a letter and says, Mr. Pulgarin, is there a way to, get this teacher the letter? Like, this teacher meant something to me. And I think that was lost, on that abrupt departure. Like, here was this kid trying to get a letter for this teacher that just kind of abruptly left. Now, I'm not trying to, in a way, people leave jobs for different reasons, but education is such a sensitive thing because we operate by academic years. And so it's not like, in a job where if you quit in July, who cares? And if you quit in August, it's the same. Like, we work in academic years where we have starts to a school year, the middle of the school year, and the ending. And there's never a good time to quit except like during the 3 months between, summer. And kids get attached. And I just remember telling that kid, like, yeah, I'm going to do my best to get this letter to this teacher. And this teacher did not want to be contacted by the school. And so I was never able to give it to him, and if this kid is listening to the podcast, he'll know. But no, other than that,
I still have your letter, buddy. And you even see that, like, think about elementary. I see this the most when you see like, okay, where everyone's a grade older, and you have the little second graders now be like third graders, and the kinder now being first graders, and they'll run like when everyone's waiting in line, and they'll run to their old teacher and give her hugs. Like, I just need to see you. I need to, that is so important for development. Like, wow, she's there. I'm able to start developing that flexibility of leaving this teacher and building relationships. You're expanding that gamut of relationships. So hopefully that we're able to build some structures around that, man, because those departures become painful.
For sure. And well, Carlos, that brings us to the end of our podcast today, where we spoke about 3 stories. I gave up trying to keep us between under 30 minutes because it's just like these topics are, I'm not going to abruptly end these conversations where they're fruitful and they're insightful. And so, my goal is always a range now. It's not a specific time. It's a range. I'm going to be more flexible. But, I usually end every podcast with a positive thought of the week. But today I want to do something different because we have the North American Restorative Conferences coming up on November 5th through the 7th in Downey, California. And, this is a conference that LARP is putting together. And I want to give you an opportunity, to speak to our listeners or people out there about the conference.
Yeah, this is a super exciting event for us at LARP, and the culmination of years and years and years of work and collaborating with amazing minds around restorative practices. And this is our very own West Coast restorative practices conference, like restorative justice conference in the West Coast. So if you're a West Coast educator, you're, a lot of the trainers, a lot of our people that facilitate, a lot of individuals that are in the restorative justice world, in the classroom setting, social service setting, are going to be presenting. So we have over 30 breakout sessions, and it's in the beautiful Embassy Suites in Downey, California, where it's just come in, network with other like-minded individuals. We're also going to be able to provide first day certifications. So for the pre-conference, which is one, this is an amazing opportunity for people that want to dive into these practices. They're going to be able to walk away with a certification, so they could immediately go ahead and implement practices at their school sites or organizations.
Awesome. And I'm going to link in the description of this. You can find the link to the conference. And, I'm excited. I'm going to be presenting. I'm excited on the 5th and the 6th. I'm going to be presenting. Carlos, you're a keynote. Nice. We have two other really impressive keynotes and collaboration. I would say in my education career, I only started to go to conferences as, after 15 years of teaching. I never saw I saw them as interruptions, to be honest. Like, why do I want to go to a conference? Like, I'm teaching all day, and then I have to leave a supplant. But now I understand the value. Like, conferences have the ability to, to refreshing your desire, to connect you with educators, to re-sharpen your why, why you're doing it. And it shouldn't even be, this should be required, I think. Like, everybody has to go to a conference because it's almost like a splash of fresh water.
Yeah, Joe Forbes identified that, right? Find your tribe. And find your tribe. Like, when you're in a conference, when you're in a conference and you're there with people that think like how you think about, and it just helps you. It pours back into you.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Carlos, for your time today. You can listen to 3 in the News on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, and Amazon Music. Be sure to follow us to get notifications on new episodes. Thanks for listening. Bye, everybody.